Welcome to another exciting edition of Financial Literacy Series of 2023. I am your coordinator and co-host, Anthony Smalls. We want to thank you all for coming out and devoting your time, not just to programming, but just to listen to us, because that means a lot. So thank you so much. This session is going to be called Manage Debt to Build Wealth. Tilt the scales in your favor. Now, you see how the scale on the screen is a little tilted, unbalanced. We want to even it out a little bit. So hopefully the things that we teach you today, it'll help in your career investment, your financial investment, to balance out the scales in your favor. So let's begin the slide, please. So don't forget, we have tips and hints. We want everyone that comes into the Zoom to please be aware of the mute function, because we don't want to interrupt the presentation or throw any of the presenters off. Please be aware of the download section in the chat. We will be putting files in the chat. We will be putting this presentation in the chat. So please look out there. Please make sure you take advantage of adjusting your view for the speakers. If you look, I believe, on the top right of your screen, if you're on a computer, and if you are on your phone, I believe you could change the view as well. But if you want to see more of everyone speaking or everybody that's actually on the Zoom, please take advantage of that. Remember that this session will be recorded, so we will share it with you at a later date. It will eventually join our financial literacy website section. And if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat, or you could feel free to use the raise your hand function, and we will call on you if you have any questions or if you want to know anything. So thank you so much. Just in case you missed the first session, let me give you some background on our presenters. This is Kim Bourne, has a New York-based firm called Playfair Planning Services. She's from Brooklyn. She's a certified public accountant and certified financial planner. And Mr. Kevin Hutt, he also has a CPA and a CFP. His motto is, let's reinvent wealth management. His company is called Onyx Access and Wealth Management, LLC. It's based in the Maryland, DC area. Together, they have managed over $100 million in client assets all over the US. And before we get started, let's get to our first poll question. How does this work? We're going to throw up random polls. We're going to ask you to participate. If you participate in our polls, if you participate in our surveys, we will select those participants that possibly win a gift at the last session. In order to be nominated for a gift at the last session, you have to attend the last session and hear your name called, so I can get your personal information to try to get you the gifts that we have for you. So please, as I get ready to launch the first poll, I would like everybody to participate as much as possible. So this first question says, how do you hope this session will impact your credit score? Let's launch the poll and give you the options. We have established credit history. We have increased understanding. We have increased credit score. We have minimized theft and fraud, and we have other. Please take a few moments to participate in the poll, and this gives you guaranteed opportunity to try to win one of the prizes at the end. Okay, they're coming in fast. I see a lot of the questions. Okay, that's great. That's great. We're at 9. Can we get 10? Can we get 10 participants? 10 participants? Okay, so we'll close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Close the poll, and let's share the results. So it looks like the most popular answer was to increase the credit score. Second one was increase understanding, and then minimize theft and fraud. So thank you for participating in our first poll. We greatly appreciate it. And we will go to next view, which is, we'll pass it to our presenters, and they will begin the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony, for welcoming us. Kevin and I are delighted to be with the medical community of Mount Sinai once again, and all of the affiliates and guests that are attending tonight's webinar. When we thought about debt, we first want to acknowledge the debt of gratitude that we owe to the medical professionals, just for all of the work that they've done on the front lines, getting us through this pandemic. We still are experiencing some of the after effects. So we want to also just express our gratitude to all medical professionals and everyone on the front lines. Our focus tonight is credit management in honor of Black History Month, the second of our series. And our goal, as Anthony said, is to give you some ideas and strategies as to how you can tilt the scale of debt in your favor. When we visit the doctor's office, most scales just give us a number, tell us how much we weigh. We don't get a reading on what percentage of that weight is fat versus what percentage is muscle. Similarly, when we think about debt, just thinking about, oh, I'm indebted by $300,000 or $400,000. Not all debt is bad, right? Not all debt is fat. Some is fat, but some is also muscle. So we want you to think about what percentage of one's debt is good and what percentage is bad. The goal may not necessarily to be eliminate all debt, but to manage it, just as we would manage muscles and build good debt. So what is good debt? Good debt is that debt that is attached to assets that increase in value. Those that could be things like a house, even student debt, right? Student debt is created from an investment in oneself, because we know that as our doctors study and our students improve their skill sets, they will eventually earn more. So don't think about student debt as something that's so terrible, even though we are going to give some strategies tonight on how to manage that. Bad debt, on the other hand, tends to be tied to assets that depreciate in value, things like cars, boats, credit card debt. They tend to have shorter term payoffs than good debt, and also tend to have higher interest rates. So as we go to tonight and we work to tilt that debt scale in our favor, just be mindful that the goal is not necessarily to figure out how to get rid of debt. We don't want people to be overwhelmed by it, but to have strategies on how to leverage debt, as it is a critical part of wealth building. And with that, I'll hand it over to Kevin to level set us and then jump into some of the strategies that we're going to share. Kevin?
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. And I tell you, I work hard at trying to tilt that schedule toward muscle, but so if you guys find the secret, let me know. And again, I just want to echo Kim's comments. Just thank you to the health providers and first responders that got us through a very horrendous period of COVID. You know, I always say health is the best wealth. It's so important, vitally important, that we are living a healthy, full life, so that once we get to a point where we've accumulated a measure of financial prosperity, we're able to enjoy it. So again, much appreciation to your profession for continuing to provide the best healthcare in the world, actually. So thank you, here in the United States. So as we look at this concept of credit management as a critical part to building wealth, it is really, really a part of our overall strategy, because debt erodes your ability to build wealth. I mean, when you think about it, it encumbers your future earnings, right? And really severely limits your ability to save and invest. You know, it could prolong dreams because you're indebted in the short term. So managing credit is really very critical. And Kim highlighted the difference between good and bad credit. I always say when credit is being used strategically, I call it credit. When it's not and we're in trouble, I call it debt. And when you go back to kind of the medieval term for debt, it's called a state of being under obligation to make a payment. So we want to use it strategically to leverage some of the things that we'd like to accomplish, both from an investment standpoint, from a wealth building standpoint. So tonight we kind of capsulize those in three critical areas, I think, that are important to achieve that goal. First and foremost, we want to manage and, if not eliminate, student loan debt. Secondly, we want to always be at a point where we're securing optimal credit terms, so that we can get to the third bullet, which is to really be in a position to finance our dreams and continue to build wealth. So let's dive into a little bit first, the student loan piece. You know, when I look at student loans, this is really kind of a strategic bet on your future. Kim mentioned that there's certain good debt and bad debt. Well, in my view, student loans are probably one of the best types of loans you can make because you're betting on your future. You're investing in your ability to earn money and based on a career, based on an education. It's not a short-term loan. So a lot of times people kind of look at it as short-term, but it's really like a mortgage. It's designed, student loans are designed to be paid with a career of earnings, which can span over 20 or 30, 40 years, particularly for healthcare providers. Paying it off early is great, but again, I look at it as a long-term loan. So when we look at some of the federal student loans and what are some of the benefits of borrowing federal student loans, you hear the word thrown around a lot, subsidized. What does subsidized mean versus unsubsidized? So generally, when we're looking at a subsidized loan, they're going to be pretty much need-based because the federal government is providing a subsidy in some respects. How are they subsidizing you? One, a federal subsidized student loan, the federal government is paying the interest as long as you're in school, at least part-time. So that's a subsidy. There are also some other benefits. So when you leave school, and this is all undergrad pretty much, there's a grace period of about 6 months where the federal government continues to pay that loan. So that's kind of a subsidized loan in many respects. There are no loan payments during this deferment period. So again, subsidized loans, ideally, if you have to get a student loan, you ideally want subsidized, but you can see there, they're pretty much income-based. Now you have unsubsidized student loans, which are pretty much probably graduate loans for the most part, some undergrad, no financial need assessment required to get these kinds of loans. The school kind of really determines how much of that unsubsidized loan you're allowed to receive, but the one bad thing with unsubsidized loans is that the interest continues to accrue even during the period when you're in school. Couple of terms here that are important, deferment. When you have a deferment, typically that is an opportunity that's available under subsidized loans to defer loan payments. It's also an opportunity to defer interest payments. So typically, subsidized loans offer you that benefit. A deferment, I want to take some time to pay it back, and also can you defer charging me interest during that period. However, forbearance does not allow that. Forbearance says we will stop payments right now, but interest will continue to accrue. So I think you want to always be mindful of these types of loans. Again, ideally, Kim, as you mentioned, good debt, bad debt, even within the student loan arena, probably good debt, would you agree, is going to be mostly federally subsidized loan. And you want to explore those options first, and the unsubsidized loans, kind of the last resort. Additionally, federal subsidized loans are available for some kind of repayment options that are available to us. Primarily, the student loans for federal government. There are certain provisos in which, if you're providing public services, those loans can be forgiven in some respects for providing services over a period of time. Typically, those are available to teachers, firefighters, first responders. Typically, again, in those instances, if you provide a public service for a certain amount of time, typically some of these loans can be forgiven. But while we're on the subject of federal student loans, I'd like to share some interesting statistics. So right now in the US, there is $1.7 trillion in student loans. And 92% of that is with the federal government, believe it or not. The average debt for students with bachelor degrees is $28,000. graduate school loans, 78,000. Medical students, average debt there is 203,000. I got a question, why is the dental school debt higher than you guys? The average debt is 302,000. So I don't know. A lot of times, Kim, when I'm in the dental chair and I have a procedure done, I say, wow, did you guys apply my insurance? You know, so just some interesting stats about just federal loans. Good standing here, which is the next topic. Good standing is if your loan is in default, then it really limits your ability to get student loans, get financial aid, as well as to get any future federal student loans. So you want to keep the loan in good standing. Now, if you happen to be in default and you make 9 consecutive payments, monthly payments, then you'll sort of kind of rehabilitate yourself and be eligible again for to be in good standing for different federal loan student benefits. I think here, when we're looking at consolidation of loans, there's always pros and cons. So here, when we look at consolidating loans, some of the pros are sometimes you have multiple loans, 3 or 4, 5, 6 loans. So with different payments and different payment scales. So sometimes consolidating those into one single loan can be helpful because there's one single payment. Additionally, sometimes when you consolidate those loans, that loan gets spread out over a new term of years, and that can sometimes lower the monthly payment. Oftentimes, you may have several loans that have variable interest rates. Again, if I can consolidate these loans, I may be able to lock them into a fixed interest rate. Some of the cons, again, you know, we may be lengthening that loan period as a result of consolidating those loans now. So we refinance them and the loan period has been extended. And it's, you know, you may be paying more interest over the long term. So I think in one of our handouts, we have a website that you can go to, I think, to explore the pros and cons. It's called www.studentloanhero.com. Great website to just explore and get some good pros and cons about whether to consolidate your loan or not. We talked a little bit about this public service loan forgiveness. This is typically available for teachers and firefighters, first responders, nurses, military members. Essentially, these programs allow for some loan forgiveness in exchange for services and employment in the public sector for a particular term. Now, to qualify for this, it's very important that you maintain sort of a history of payments, because I think you need to have paid like maybe 120 consecutive payments or something. I forgot the number over a certain amount of time. So we always want to take advantage of any public service forgiveness. So if you're working for a federal government, that's my solar lighting. If you're working for a federal agency, public agency, I would encourage you to ask your HR personnel if such programs are available to you. Okay, super. Again, just some additional comments on the public service forgiveness program. Again, you want to start as early as possible. And then you'll see that third bullet where I say avoid forbearance and deferment. You want the clock to keep ticking. So again, here's where in order to qualify, you have to have a consistent pattern of payments for a certain period of time. When you have a forbearance that stops the clock, you have to start all over again. So just want to, again, continue to be aware of these kinds of programs that are available to you. This is a waiver. This kind of sunsetted in October of 2022. Essentially, this waiver allowed for, again, when we're looking at public service loan forgiveness, one of the factors is payment. So this kind of allowed for you to take into account some history of payments that would not otherwise qualify. This waiver kind of ended in 10/22, but again, you always just want to stay abreast of any kind of new legislation that's happening in the area of student loans. Again, we've talked a little bit about this federal loan. There's kind of a one-time adjustment. There is the public service loan forgiveness, but there are also some one-time adjustments to student loans that the Department of Education offers. So again, we always want to look for opportunities to reduce our loans outstanding. This is a big one, federal loan forgiveness. President Biden came in and really sort of trumpeted that debt forgiveness. Right now it's at the doorstep of the Supreme Court. So if you want to know where you want to go to promote the legislation. But there are a few factors. In order to be eligible, you have to be an individual that earns less than $125,000. Or the household income has to be less than $250,000. And if you do qualify, there is a cancellation of $10,000 that's available. But right now, that's at the doorstep of the Supreme Court. That was one of the first questions Anthony asked me about when we got started. And here are just want to kind of recap in terms of student loans. I would always encourage people to go to studentaid.ed.gov. Again, you're always going to find a plethora of information about programs that are available to help with student loans. Kim, I think I'll turn it back over. Or do we have a poll question coming up?
Yep, it's coming up in a little bit, but just
Okay.
to kind of close off the student loan conversation, Kevin did an amazing job at detailing some of the highlights that we need to know about federal student loans, and in terms of if we put those in categories of good and bad, the federal student loans, the subsidized, are typically the better ones. Sometimes, for various reasons, students will find themselves in the hands of private lenders. Private lenders are generally loans, non-federal loans, right? Those that are made by lenders such as banks, credit unions, state agencies, or perhaps even the universities themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes these types of loans, sometimes they can have higher interest rates. Everything is specific to an individual, but it's important to note that if you have private loans, then those loans may not be subject to some of the relief offered by the federal government. And so it's just always important to know what types of loans you have, whether they're subsidized, unsubsidized, whether they're federal or private, because different types of loans may have different types of features. We wanted to make sure that you have this information in your slide. Some great websites and resources where you can find out more information about student loans. I think Kevin mentioned one already, studentloanhero.com, www.magnifymoney.com, and www.nerdwallet.com. Great resources. We want to be mindful of some of the more kind of predatory lending schemes that might be out there, encouraging you to consolidate debt. As Kevin said, consolidation is not always the best strategy. So always good to talk with a financial advisor and reputable firms before making important decisions that could have unintended consequences. With that, we will go ahead and launch that second poll. Anthony?
Welcome back. We are here with another poll. So if you're ready to participate, here is your question. Poll number 2. What is your debt mostly comprised of? Is it bad debt, credit cards, and car loans? Is it good debt, mortgages and student loans? Or is it no debt? Let's launch this poll and see what your feedback is. Poll is now launched. So take some time to select your option if you feel which one it is. Is it bad debt, good debt, no debt? Question again is, what is your debt mostly comprised of? I'm going to say mine is mostly comprised of ordering out. I have to stop ordering. That's where all my money is going. So we have all 15 participants. So we will end the poll now and we will share the results. Let's see. So most people said good debt mortgages, and 6 people said bad debt, credit cards, student loans, and 2 people said no debt. So that's a great analogy right there. So I will go to the next slide, which I believe throw it back to our presenters.
Yeah, so it's good that it looks like the scales are slightly tilted in favor of good debt. So that's always good to note. As we think about loans and private student loans, refinancing a student loan is an option, just as refinancing a mortgage loan is an option. There are a variety of not-for-profits out there that students can look to that may offer lower APRs, faster payoffs, different repayment periods up to 20 years. Some will even allow for releasing of a cosigner if there were times when others, like parents, had to co-sign a loan, and then that's no longer optimal as you begin your career and can manage your own debt. Some offer automated payment reduction and unemployment protection. So many different features out there to look at if refinancing might be a strategy that will help you to manage that student loan debt. I also want to highlight recent legislation, and that is going to be an important takeaway for tonight. Always being abreast of the breaking news. One of the reasons that we have these webinars is to keep you on top of the trends and what's happening. The Secure Act 2.0 is a robust bill that's really designed to help Americans build a more secure retirement. There are many features that we are not going to go into on tonight's webinar. We're just going to limit it to the feature that's related to student loans. The exciting thing, I mean, this is really changing the landscape for retirement. Who would have thought that paying down student loan debt could actually increase your retirement savings? So in late December of 2022, President Biden signed into law this Secure 2.0. So it's called 2.0 because it's a subsequent bill from the initial Secure Act that also had a lot of enhancements to retirement savings. And the feature that relates to student loans will allow an employee that pays down their student debt to get an incentive from their employer, like a kind of match to a 401k or a 403b to incentivize the paying down of the student loan. It's really revolutionary, very out of the box thinking, and we're just delighted that some type of incentive and relief is available, because oftentimes by the time, especially medical professionals that have higher student loan debt, as Kevin highlighted in those stats, by the time you have to make those payments and take care of other priorities, sometimes saving for retirement can fall by the wayside. So here is an opportunity for you to check in with your HR providers, find out how your employer plan might be participating in this, and when you can enroll in this exciting opportunity. I think it's going to begin in 2024. So it's not something that's going to happen immediately, because the logistics need to be worked out in terms of managing it. So definitely put this in your action items, speak to your HR professionals now, because they're going to be preparing their systems to handle this type of thing and be aware of the type of debt that you have. Great conversation to be having, and a planning technique to go forward. All right, with that, we are going to be moving to the next segment, securing optimal credit terms. I'm going to hand it back over to Kevin.
Thanks, Kim. And just a follow-up comment on your discussion of Secure 2.0, Act 2.0. Typically you have debt and retirement savings on opposite sides. So here now they're on the same side of the fence. I mean, working together, what I always say is, when you're talking about retirement funding, it's much easier to reduce debt than to raise retirement income. So it's just great that that this legislation is just groundbreaking. And I like the fact that you're right, it starts in 2024. So that gives people a great window of opportunity to really do the strategy, do the homework. So on 1/1/24, you're really on a glide path to take maximum advantage of Secure Act 2.0. Kim, great strategy.
Absolutely, tilting that scale in your favor.
Yes. So as we move into the next slide, which talks about securing optimum credit terms, again, another aspect of tilting the scale to build wealth. So again, we've now taken care of our initial investment. which is primarily student loans. We've got to, first of all, invest in our ability to build wealth, to earn wealth. And that means education of some sort to do that. I'm reminded of one of my favorite scriptures from Malcolm X, where he says, education is our passport to the future. And he says, tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. So again, just investing in these kind of webinars, becoming informed and educated on strategies to build wealth are just critical to being able to do so tomorrow. So when we talk about securing optimal credit terms, part of being able to build wealth is being able to have good credit. So here we want to kind of look at some of the things that help us make this assessment, sort of like a diagnostic. As you know, when you're going to the doctor, they run a lot of tests. So here, one of the tests diagnostic is always going to be our credit bureau and credit reports. We want to be, these services provide sort of some tracking for us to be able to look at. But we want to be strategic and look at them first. A lot of times people don't look at these reports until they're applying for credit, right? And they get told, no, we want to look for them first. We want to be aware our credit score is before we apply for lending. I don't want to find out when I'm putting in an application for a loan. We want to know what goes into that credit score so we can strategically improve it and work on it, and why it's important, what hurts it, and what makes it goes, what improves it. So when we look at understanding our credit score, couple of credit bureaus and credit agencies come to mind. So here, there are three major credit bureaus: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. They all have their own unique way of tracking credit history and credit activity. A lot of times, if you're applying for, let's say, a mortgage or some sort, that mortgage company will look at all three, and they'll typically select the middle score to use as your average. So we always want to be looking at these different credit agencies, seeing what they have. We want to be able to make corrections. If we see something that's an error, we can, I think the nice thing about these credit agencies, you can write a letter to the credit bureau and protest something that's on your credit report. And the lender has a certain amount of time to respond to that. If they don't respond, then that comes off your credit report. So that means that you don't have to chase this person down to get it corrected. Sometimes, if we have negative credit things on the report, we might want to reach out to that creditor and see if we can work out an arrangement for a favorable result. If I pay you this amount, can you change the marking on my credit report? So here, all these things are critical. Kim, when we talk about refinancing those private loans, this will pay into it, right? Our credit report will help us be able to do that. Consolidating those loans, this will play into that. All right, so I think that's a little bit about just the credit bureau's credit score. A couple of things affect your credit score, certainly payment history. One of the cardinal rules of credit is you never want to miss a payment. I used to have children. I would say, oh, look, if you need the money, call me. Whatever you do, don't miss a credit payment. Because Kim, I'm trying to get off that co-sign loan that I had for a kid. And when you miss a payment, it makes it more difficult for me. So you never miss a credit, never want to miss a payment. How much you owe factors into it. Are you indebted or not? Are you overextended? Those things affect your credit score. That could pull your credit score down. How long have you had credit? Or what types of credit do you have? We talked about good credit, bad credit. Credit cards, auto loans, these things, if we have, if our credit is fairly extensive in these regards, that could hurt us. Certainly mortgage history is one of the most important elements of your credit report. And then you talk about hard inquiries and soft inquiries. Hard inquiries are when someone is really pulling all your credit reports to make a credit decision. Sometimes that's an indicator, a negative indicator on your credit report. Soft inquiries are ways that credit agencies are able to kind of get an assessment of your credit without actually pulling a report. So, so just a couple of things about credit scores there. You probably heard of FICO scores, and if you're like most people, you say, "Who the heck is FICO?" But it's an acronym for the Fair Isaac Corporation. This company kind of pioneered a method for calculating credit scores by pulling together information from the different credit reports. So, so FICO score is what kind of everybody kind of judges things by. Here you'll see kind of the different ranges. 3 to 575 is considered very poor. Fair credit scores are 580 to 690. Now, again, each of these credit agencies will give you a different score. So Transamerica will give you a score, Equifax will give you a score, and Experian will give you a score. And again, a lender will generally take the middle score to determine your credit worthiness. You see a good score is 670, very good score is 740. So generally to qualify for an auto loan, you're probably going to need a score above 600. If you're trying to do a conventional mortgage, you're generally going to want to have a score higher than 620 or so. And hey, Kim, if you want the black card, you need to score 800. So I think just give you some idea of the credit scores and how they kind of play a role in factoring your credit worth.
That black card is still a mystery, Kevin. That black card is still a mystery.
Yeah. We uncover it, let me know, okay? So when you think about, again, what goes into that FICO score, we talked a little bit about it. We said payment history, of course, is the most significant, paying bills on time. I generally like to pay them early. Certainly credit utilization. This is an interesting one. So essentially here, let's say you have a credit line of $1,000. What bodes well for your credit score is that your credit is no more than $300 on that $1,000 credit line. 30%, that's what they call credit utilization. If it's 9,000 out of 1,000, that's a high credit utilization, and that tends to pull your score down. So we generally want low credit utilization on credit cards. We want to keep the oldest card available. Sometimes people say close out a credit card. You want to keep it open, particularly if it has some history. And then you want to be careful of opening new credit accounts. That also kind of can have an impact on your FICO score. So again, we see that credit really matters a great deal. And not only, used to be loan approval just for that purposes, certainly determines the amount that you can borrow. If you're doing a mortgage loan or a line of credit, interest rate, the worse your credit are, the lower your credit score, the higher your interest rate. Employment potential. So a lot of times now employers are looking at your credit history. It kind of is a soft indication of your character. I mean, if I'm going to hire someone in a sensitive area and they've got really bad credit, it may cause me to concern about just their character. Relationships. I think there was a stat that was done that said 38%, Kim, as we talk about Valentine's Day. Don't go home and do this, okay? Not on Valentine's Day. Wait till tomorrow. But 38% of adults would reconsider a romantic relationship because of the other person's debts. So I think as part of marital planning, it's a good idea to sort of get some information on your spouse's credit history, because it can have a great impact on your future and your relationship. Okay.
Absolutely, for better or for worse.
Better for worse. So Kim, I think I'll I think just kind of recap here, get how you find your score. Again, there's credit card agencies that you can go to, credit score services. Experian, a lot of them you can purchase a service, and they're always letting you know what your scores are. But there is a free credit report that you're able to get every year without any charge. I think you can go to freecreditreport.com, I think, to get that information.
Wonderful. All right, Kevin. So hope you have a lot of great information. Kevin shared some notes there to be taken about improving that score. We have our third poll for the evening, Anthony.
Hello, I am back. Third poll. So this poll is, which of the following factors do you think has the biggest impact on your credit score? And the options are, as I launch the poll: payment history, credit utilization, length of credit history, types of credit used, recent credit inquiries. Please pick the ones that you think fit the answer the best. So we have 11, three more. The three more folks, do y'all want to participate before I close out? Okay, two more. Okay, one more person out there. Okay, we'll count it down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's share the results. And everyone picked payment history. Some people picked credit utilization and length of credit history. One person picked type of credit. So thank you all for participating. Kevin, can you please let them know what the correct answer is?
And most people got it right, payment history. So you got good audience.
As the song goes, pay those bills on time.
Yes.
Nothing beats paying the bills on time. All right. So with that, where are we? Tips to improve the score? Is that where we are?
Yep. I think, yes. Did we go over
How to hurt the score?
hurt your score?
Hurt the score, one before that.
I can, Kim, you want me to speak to these? I can, or?
Okay, yeah, no, absolutely. I can chime in here, just kind of in summary. I mean, Kevin shared many of these things already. Obviously, there are things that we can do to lower our credit score, and these are not ideal because credit scores or poor credit scores, lowering your credit score can have very negative consequences, especially when you're about to finance something. So as we said, pay those bills on time, do not miss payments. Also, credit utilization is important. So when we talk about maxing out a card, it's actually better to, if you have a credit line of, let's say, $20,000, to have $10,000 or $5,000 to $10,000 used on a line of credit that's $20,000 than to have $5,000 fully maxed out on a $5,000 line. So it's not just a matter of how much you borrow, you have to look at utilization in terms of your credit line. So try not to max out your cards, try to keep them, under the 50% range so that it's clear that you have the capacity to borrow and you pay on time. Applying for too many cards or loans in a short amount of time can also have an adverse effect on your credit because it makes it seem like there's some desperation there. Mm-hmm. Canceling credit cards with zero balances, closing out too many cards all at once is also not a good idea because it's just, a lot of hits on the credits. So if you have cards and they're not being utilized, maybe you might get rid of them gradually, but try not to have unnecessary hits on your credit report. Transferring balances to a single card. That can have an adverse effect because, again, you might be utilizing too large of a percentage of that credit line. So you have to be mindful about that. But if there are incentives in doing it, everything has its place. So there's always that it depends when you think about transferring balances. You do it when it makes sense to do that. Co-signing a loan or adding a person to your credit card. Want to be mindful of that. You are ultimately going to be responsible for that person, even if they don't pay it on time. So beware. Letting any credit report and error go undisputed. Not a good idea. Sometimes we know that we know that we know that we don't owe a particular bill, but we have to go down the road of doing the dispute so that it just doesn't sit out there and then come back to haunt us, accruing debt and lowering our score. We can be unnecessarily getting reported to collection. So definitely important to stay on top of that credit. And then finally, avoiding debt settlements, foreclosures, and liens. Those also take a very negative or adverse impact on our credit. So try to stay out of those situations and be very proactive.
Excellent.
Tips to improve the score. One thing that just came to mind as I've thought of that last point, if there is a situation that comes up in one's life, like a potential disability or some type of disruption to work, if you've had good, especially when you've had good credit all your life, some might be surprised to see how powerful it is to simply just get on the phone and share your story. Creditors can often do all types of things, lower the rates on a credit card, have some type of forbearance. So if you sense that there's some type of situation that's coming up, don't allow it to get out of control. Get on that telephone and call up the creditors to make arrangements and let them know what's going on. And as I mentioned, sometimes without any type of documentation at all, they will negotiate with you and lower that rate. Every conversation should always end with, is that the best you can do? And you'll be surprised if you say that 2 or 3 times, the rate can go lower and lower. So that's the magic script. Is that the best you can do?
And I like your point, Kim, which is communication is just key. I mean, don't put your head in the sand.
Exactly.
But communicating with these agencies and befriending them because they know of the options that are available to you. And I think you hit a couple of key points there. And then, these debt settlement companies, well, there's no free lunch. I mean, so, there are a lot of agencies say you can settle your debt for $10, or 10 cents something on the dollar. Again, these things are very, I'd say, proceed with caution. I think that's a critical one.
Absolutely. And some of these things to improve your score, we've already talked about already, can't re-emphasize enough, making payments on time, keeping tabs on your utilization rate. Timing your applications carefully is important, not having too many hits on your credit to take out too many loans all at once. Apply for a new credit only as needed. So just don't opening up things just for the sake of opening them up. That's not a good strategy. Paying off debt, absolutely. Don't want to have high interest revolving debt out there. That's eating away from wealth that could be accumulating where you're receiving the interest on the other side of the fence or the scale rather. And fixing those credit report errors. So if you being proactive as Kevin recommended and looking at that credit report, if you notice things that you don't recognize or that are incorrect, proactively get them resolved.
And Kim, I think, I'll transition here to protection from fraud. That's a rampant area. And I won't highlight all of these things, but I like, you want to shred your credit card offers. So critical how many times people reach in the mail and all of a sudden you have a credit card that you didn't know you had. Strong passwords are interesting. I think our last segment we were talking about when we were talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, how we talked about people tend to use, and we talk about electronic credit. People tend to save their credit card, their online passwords, so that if I have access to your computer, I'm protecting your name, your password pre-fills. So we want to be careful about passwords there. We want to check credit reports. That's an opportunity where we can see fraud right off the cuff. A lot of transactions are done online now. So we just want to be careful about online transactions, make certain we're using well-protected sites there. I think we're ready for another poll question, Anthony.
Yeah, we got a rapid round to launch here, Anthony.
Okay, so I am back on and let's get the rapid going. Okay, so here's how I was going to go. I'm going to post the polls and we're going to go through the first question, but there's 3 back to back. So I'm going to give you time for each one of them. Okay, let's launch the poll. The first question is true or false? You only have 1 credit score. Do you think that's true or do you think that's false? Then number 2, true or false? Applying for new credit will always lower your credit score. Do you think that's true or do you think that's false? Then the third question, true or false? Rent payments help raise your credit score. Do you think that's true or do you think that's false? Okay, the answers are pouring in. That is great. That is great participation for this question. Now, the funny thing is with question 3, will rent payments raise your credit score? I always say, will rent payments help me eliminate paying rent? How about that one? Okay, we'll close the polls at 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so for the first question, true or false? You will have 1 credit score. And a lot of people said false. Is that one correct? Yes, it is. That's great, y'all. So the next one, true or false?
False, right? Yeah,
Yes,
most people were right. Absolutely.
The second one, applying for new credit will always lower your credit score. True or false? Most people said false. And that is correct as well. The last one, rent payments help raise your credit score. True or false? A lot of people pick true on this one. And let's see, is that one correct? And that one is actually false. Paying your rent will not help your credit score. Credit scores is normally accumulated by the amount of outstanding debt you have by a total limit of debt, I believe. But Kevin and Kim can correct me on that.
Yeah, it's mostly false. They're for the most part, most landlords do not report to credit reporting agencies. However, like if someone were to become delinquent and you have a very savvy and proactive landlord that knows how to go about the process, they could definitely damage your credit. So it's mostly false, but there could be some true in there as well.
And I have answered your earlier question, Anthony, about how to stop paying rent.
Please
build
give
wealth.
me that.
All right, Kim, build wealth. That's the way to stop paying rent.
That's why
you're on the path to doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is what we are here to do, to chart that path toward wealth and help people finance their dreams, right? Finance your dreams and build wealth, which brings us to the third and final segment for this evening. When we think about opportunities to finance and debt, it just brings us back to the beginning where we started from, where we talked about, good and bad debt, comparing that to fat and muscle. Not all debt is bad. And as we build wealth and become more sophisticated in our needs, we're going to want to have some fun. You're going to want to buy some toys, and you want to be creative in how you go about financing these different options. So think about debt. Oops, that's by mistake there. So think about other opportunities, unconventional mortgages and lines of credit and creative financing to be able to purchase the items that you need at better rates. Each of these things could be a webinar unto themselves, but we just want to let people know that there are other options to finance the things that you want to purchase, the more expensive items that you may want to purchase, outside of just borrowing from a bank, or if you need a car, borrowing from a car dealership. There are many types of loans. One that falls into this type of category is referred to as SBL, or security-based lending, where you actually use the investments that you have as collateral for your borrowing. Your investments are able to continue to grow, but because they're collateralized, there's less risk, and therefore the interest rates can come down. So these are things to keep in your kind of toolbox for time down the road as wealth becomes higher and higher. Additionally, when one thinks about purchasing homes, or whether it's a primary residence, whether it's investment real estate. Non-traditional or uncommon means of buying land or property, they're out there. Creative financing is generally available to purchase or finance property, where you're not, borrowing money from a traditional bank. There could be private lenders, there can be loan assumptions, you can have intra-family loans if there are other family members who are in a position to extend that type of credit. Renting to own, a lot of different things out there, a lot of different strategies out there that often are untouched because people just know one way to do it. A 30-year mortgage. Mortgages don't have to go on for 30 years. One can customize or reduce the repayment schedule. So just try not to always just fall into the strategy that everybody might be using, and think about, how can I personalize my debt to align with my cash flow, which is, different from your neighbors and different from friends. You have other thoughts on that, Kevin?
I'd agree. I mean, the operative word is strategy. And we apply strategy to so many things, but you just see us applying it very extensively to the use of credit. So I just agree with everything you just said.
Yeah, and as we think about personalizing the strategy, whether it be for managing our student debt or other goals that you may have in the future, you want to be mindful of changing interest rates. Listen out to hear what's happening with the Fed. And if you're working with advisors, have those types of conversations. Where is money best deployed? Is it best deployed in a savings account where interest rates right now can be in excess of 4%? Is it best deployed in an investment, or is it best deployed figuring out how to finance some of the things that one might need? So a lot of different moving parts in this inflationary environment that we found ourselves in. With that, I think we have our final poll for the evening. Anthony, do you want to launch that poll?
There you go.
Yes, I'm coming. I'm sorry. I was trying to unmute and click something else on the screen and got confused. Okay, so let's get, last poll is, let's launch. What might be your next steps to manage or eliminate your debt? Number 1, reduce credit utilization. Number 2, dispute errors on your credit report. Number 3, monitor credit reports regularly. Number 4, tune into legislation regarding student loan forgiveness. Or last option, all of the above. Okay, we have most of the participants already answering. We'll close out the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and share the results. So majority of people picked already above. A few picked reduced credit utilization, and one picked dispute errors on your credit report. Can you please let us know what is the right answer?
Well, it's what's right for you, right?
I said above.
I'm inclined to agree with all the above. So, which is a good segue into kind of next steps on your journey. Again, for most, first critical step is going to be managing the student loans. We want to ensure we're optimizing the opportunities to subsidize them, to refinance them, to consolidate them, to take advantage of anything that's available, to maximize, maintain them in good standing. Paying them on a regular basis is critical to our credit score. Again, we want to stay abreast of any new legislation that's coming about. Kim mentioned Secure Act 2.0. We're waiting for a result for the Supreme Court on Biden's desire to implement a student loan forgiveness program. We want to look for opportunities to do a public service for loan forgiveness. We want to routinely access our credit report so that we can see it, see if there are any errors, see how we're doing, see if we need to, if there are any strategic steps we can take to improve that. We want to practice the techniques of improving credit. So we know that's timely payment, low credit utilization. We want to continue to look for ways to optimize credit terms. So, as our credit score improves, we may want to look to see if we can refinance credit cards at lower interest rates. Sometimes there's an opportunity to move some credit to a better card. And then, as Kim closed, we want to look for creative ways to approach financing. A lot of times, these creative strategies will really be at the doorstep of your financial advisor, because essentially these are not pretty normal consumer type approaches to financing. But again, you just want to be open to strategies that are not right there in front of you.
Awesome.
Kim, would you like to add anything to those steps or elaborate?
Yeah, I think you summed it up very well, Kevin. I hope our audience took away great points. I know we're a few minutes past time. I'll just leave it to Anthony to do the last minute wrap ups. And we have answered all of the questions that were submitted in the slides, because we know that time doesn't always permit to go through everything. Happy to stay on a few extra minutes if someone has a specific question that they might want to answer that may not have been addressed in these slides. Otherwise, I'll hand it over to you, Anthony, to wrap us up and wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day so they can go off and hopefully enjoy Valentine's with some friends or lovers.
Yeah, Valentine's Day being today when we first started organizing these. So my apologies if anybody's missing any quality time with a loved one. But at the same time, at your date night, you know what you could talk about? Financial improvements. How to improve your credit score, how to get these loans off of your credit report. So it's a good opportunity to learn something, so that the next time you're at a function or you're out on a date, you have something to talk about. But in the meantime, we like to say thank you for coming today and participating in the polls. Please pay attention to the survey. If you participate in the survey as well as the polls, your name goes up for a possibility to win a prize at our last session. Remember, we want everyone that's a part of these sessions to join the last session, so you can find out if you won a prize or not. But in honor of Black History Month and the FOD mentorship at Mount Sinai, we try to do financial literacy every February, at least 4 times a week. So thank you all for coming. Please make sure that you be aware that if you already RSVP'd or registered for the first 2 sessions, you will receive an email for the 3rd and 4th one. And then you can promote this opportunity with your friends, family members. They can all come on as well. And I'll send out an email blast towards the end of the week. And please feel free to look out for our recordings, because each session is being recorded and I will edit it soon. So thank you all, and I'll turn it back to our presenters to close out.
Oh, no, I think that's it. If you want a great conversation or a great read for Valentine's Day, perhaps a great book, Financial Intimacy, How to Create more intimacy between your money and your mate. that one tops that one comes top of mind. It's written by an African-American author. Her name is Jacquette Timmons. So that's good conversation for Valentine's Day, if you want to stick with the financial topic.
Good gift.
All right, everyone, since we are past the hour and we want everyone to continue their love day, thank you for coming out. We'll catch you next Tuesday. Everyone have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.
Good night.